Today, let's create a real simple parallax effect. So I have been working on this forest scene here, and now it's time to animate it. And what I want to do is keep this sprite here in the middle of the screen and move the background accordingly. So the sprite simply goes up and down on the spot, and the background moves to the left, which creates the illusion of movement. Now, I could just move the entire background as is and be done with it, but that might look a bit boring, and this is where the parallax effect comes into play. So what is a parallax? Put real simple, it's a trick of perspective where objects far away appear to move slower than objects close by. That's because our field of vision gets wider with distance, therefore faraway objects take far longer to cross our field of vision than objects close by. Which I have tried to illustrate here using a pig, a tree and a mountain. And as you can see, the pig is the clear winner, not because it's fast, but it has to travel the shortest distance. This phenomenon is best observed when looking out of a train or a car window. Objects near the horizon seem to hardly move, while those close to the observer just swoosh by. And yeah, that's what we call a parallax. For my scene, this means I have to split this whole thing into multiple layers that are animated separately. In my case, that's 5 layers, so a background layer, a layer of thin trees, a ground layer with some bushes and more trees, the sprite and some sparks coming in from the right, and the foreground layer. I could have split the scene into more layers, but because I work with a low resolution of only 160 to 56 pixel, there are some limitations, but more on that in a bit. First, let's pull in the background, which will just be a still image. The sprite, which is rather literal in this case, just floats up and down on the spot in a simple 2-frame animation, and I also have some sparks coming in from the right, which is a 4-frame animation. Now let's make the sprite move, or more precisely, let's move the background. I start with the ground layer because it will be the pacemaker for this scene, and it defines how far the sprite moves with each frame, which in this case will be 2 pixels. Now, to create a parallax, the back layer needs to go slower and the front layer faster. So for the front I can just increase the distance from 2 to 4 pixel, and the bigger trees now move at twice the speed. With the back layers, I'm kind of limited, because I can only decrease the distance from 2 to 1 pixel, and now you can see why I could not add more layers in the back. There is simply no room to animate those. Nonetheless, I feel like this is already working rather well, and I'm pretty happy with this simple 80-frame loop. Which brings me to the final part of this video. You see, I wanted this to loop, which meant frame 80 and frame 1 had to meet up eventually. So I had to create 3 separate loops that are all closed within those 80 frames. So if I use the ground layer as my baseline, as I did for this animation, the front layer has to be twice as wide, so 320 pixels, and the back layer can only be half that length, so 80 pixel, which means I have to use the same set of trees twice just to fill the screen. I did a similar approach with the animation from the start, which is actually just a 7-frame loop, but this time I used the mountains as my baseline and simply animated the front layers accordingly. For my forest scene, I'm pretty happy with how this parallax turned out. I was a bit skeptical at first because I'm only using 8 colors here, but the animation really helps to bring out the contrast between the layers. In my next video I will do a little post-processing on this animation and try to add a bit more depth to the scene. Well, this was a short one, but as always, I hope I see you again next time, and until then, keep your whimsy, stay creative, bye!